Hello there, my science friends. I am flying through my half marathon training, quite literally, as I do run with an increased pace nowadays. And it is time to dive back into the sports science. Or is it all biology? And look what actually happens when you go running. One major fact that I got told recently on multiple occasions is that you lose body fat and look a lot leaner. So let's grab a cup of coffee and dive into the science behind running and burning body fat. Burning fat. This expression doesn't come from nowhere. For a chemist, a combustion, so to burn something, is a reaction of a combustible substance with oxygen. To be exact, it is a redox reaction while giving off heat or sometimes also light. If you burn hydrocarbons, for example, the carbon atoms and hydrogen atoms are ripped apart at those high temperatures and put together again with oxygen atoms. In the end, the only thing remaining from hydrocarbons is carbon dioxide and water. At least when we're talking about a complete combustion. In reality, we actually most often deal with an incomplete combustion, which is how the toxic carbon monoxide comes about.
Cool. No doubt.
But what does this have to do with running and burning fat in our bodies? Our body consists in parts of those unwanted but vital fat cells. Their main task is storing energy for times when energy is not available, for example from food. Fat cells are pretty similar to any other cell. However, they consist of 90% fat. They have a fat reservoir consisting of triglycerides, and they look like this. They consist of a glycerol connecting piece looking like an E, and on that dangle those long hydrocarbon chains. Those are fatty acids. Fat has a lot of energy, a significantly higher energy density than carbohydrates or proteins. But where does this energy come from? The energy sits in those bonds between carbon atoms and can be released by breaking those bonds. When we don't get anything to eat for a long time or go for a run, well, exercise in general, our body uses energy, and those triglycerides are cut up into smaller parts. First, glycerol and fatty acids are produced. Those smaller parts can now break out of the fat cell and get into the bloodstream. Through that, the fat cells shrink. This means you can burn fat, but not the fat cells. They only get smaller or bigger depending on us losing or gaining weight. Anyways, glycerols and fatty acids make their way into our muscles and liver. There, the molecules are split even further until in the end only CO2 and water remains. So exactly like with the classical combustion we talked about in the beginning. CO2 we breathe out and water we excrete in form of sweat. But in contrast to the classic combustion, these reactions in the body don't happen through heat, but with the help of enzymes. On top of that, the molecule ATP, adenosine triphosphate, emerges while we burn fat. You already know about that from my video about creatine. When we do sports, our body burns calories and fats within our cells, and the mitochondria, the little powerhouses of the cell, produce a molecule called adenosine triphosphate, ATP. Now you already know that ATP is an energy carrier, fuel for everything we need energy for. This can be exercise, like running, or fairly simple things like digestion or heartbeat. And do you remember my very first video where we talked about coffee? I told you what caffeine does to our brain and mentioned adenosine. Adenosine is so special because it's an inhibitory neurotransmitter with the main action to dampen down our brain activity. When we have a lot of adenosine in our body, we get really tired. And now take a guess where that adenosine comes from. Exactly, from ATP. During everything that needs energy, we use up ATP. And in the end, only the A, the adenosine, is left.
Cool. No doubt.
So my body has quite a lot of fat stored in those fat cells. Now, when I go running like mad to train for this trail half marathon, this fat is broken down into smaller pieces, which are metabolized to CO2, water and ATP, fueling my muscles and slowly letting me become Speedy Gonzales.
We proceed about these things scientifically.
Our bodies really do an amazing job burning all this fat just to keep us alive. So helping it out with a little bit of exercise to get some energy is the least we can do. And with that, I'm off for my next run. And you stay sciencey. I'll see you in 2 weeks.